The town of Ashcroft wasn't the kind of place people visited unless they had to. It was quiet, sleepy, and just a little off. Among its cobblestone streets and weathered buildings stood a peculiar little shop, Grimsby's Clockworks. Its windows were dusty, the sign hanging above the door creaked with every breeze, and no one could remember the last time it had a customer. Emily was the exception. A young journalist with a penchant for urban legends, she had spent weeks hearing whispers about the shop. They said it was cursed. They said strange things happened to people who stepped inside. Emily didn't believe in curses, but she believed in a good story. And this was the kind of story that could make her career. It was a stormy evening when she pushed open the door, a bell tinkling weakly above her head. The air inside was thick with the scent of oil and aged wood. Clocks of every shape and size lined the walls, their ticking creating a symphony of chaos. Behind the counter stood an old man, hunched and pale, with spectacles perched on the edge of his nose. He looked up slowly, his eyes sharp and piercing. "Welcome," he said, in a voice like rustling leaves. "You shouldn't be here." Emily smiled, undeterred. "Are you Elias Grimsby?" The old man nodded but said nothing more. "I'm Emily Thatcher," she continued. "I'm writing an article about local legends, and your shop has quite the reputation. People say it's cursed." Elias chuckled dryly, his gaze drifting to the clocks. "Cursed, they say. Perhaps they're right." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Care to elaborate?" The old man hesitated, then gestured for her to sit on a worn stool by the counter. He reached for a small, ornate clock, its golden hands spinning erratically. "Every clock in this shop is connected to a soul," he said. "Not their life, mind you, their hope. When someone gives up, truly loses hope, their clock slows. If it stops completely, so does their existence." Emily stared at him, half expecting him to laugh and admit it was all a joke. But his expression remained grave. "Let me guess," she said, crossing her arms. "You're saying you keep people's souls here?" "I don't keep them," Elias said softly. "They're drawn here, bound by despair. I tried to stop it, but the curse isn't mine to break." Before Emily could respond, her eyes caught something on the shelf behind him. A clock. Its face was simple, its frame unassuming, but what made her blood run cold was the name engraved on its base. Emily Thatcher. She pointed, her voice trembling. "That's my name." Elias turned, his face paling. "That's impossible. I didn't make that clock." The hands were moving erratically, speeding up, slowing down, then speeding up again. "What does it mean?" Emily whispered. "It means your time is running out," Elias said gravely. "Whatever hope you're clinging to, it's slipping away. And if it strikes midnight..." He didn't finish the sentence. Emily bolted from the shop, her mind racing. She didn't believe in curses or magical clocks, but there was something undeniable about what she'd seen. Over the next few hours, Emily delved into Elias's past. The local library yielded old newspaper clippings about a young clockmaker whose shop had burned down a century ago. According to the articles, Elias had rebuilt it, but something had changed. Customers vanished, and rumors began to spread about his haunted clocks. In her research, Emily uncovered a strange detail. A man in black had visited Elias just before the fire. Witnesses described him as ageless, with piercing eyes and a knowing smile. As the hours ticked by, Emily's own clock grew louder in her mind. She could feel its presence, hear its ticking in every silent moment. Determined to confront the curse, Emily returned to the shop just before midnight. Elias was waiting for her, his expression grim. "There's a way to break it," he said, "but it's dangerous." Emily nodded. "Tell me." "You must destroy your clock," he said, placing it gently in her hands. "But if you do, you risk losing yourself entirely." The shop began to tremble as the clock's hands inched closer to midnight. Shadows gathered in the corners of the room, and a cold voice echoed, "She is mine." Emily turned to see a figure emerging from the darkness. The man in black. His smile was sharp and cold, his eyes glowing with malice. "You can't fight fate," he said, stepping closer. "Your despair brought you here. Just let it end." But Emily refused to give in. With a cry, she raised the clock and smashed it against the floor. The glass shattered, the gears scattering, and a blinding light filled the shop. When Emily opened her eyes, the shop was empty. The clocks were gone, the walls bare. Elias was nowhere to be found. She walked out into the quiet streets of Ashcroft, the storm having passed. In her pocket, she found a small, broken gear, the only reminder of what had happened. The next day, Emily wrote her article, but she left out the supernatural details. No one would believe her after all. As she finished her story, she noticed something strange on her desk. The broken gear was gone, and in its place was a tiny, ticking clock. Thanks for joining me on this journey through today's story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more tales like this, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when a new story drops. Until next time, stay curious. See you in the next tale.